With the draft combine in the books, I want to talk about some of the best standouts for the Chicago Bears from the draft combine. We're talking about the monsters that stood out that could really change what the Chicago Bears play style is this upcoming year. Talk about speed demons, people on the edge, 6'9" left tackles. We got it all. We're also going to talk about the Chicago Bears' most important free agent decisions coming up in this offseason. Not necessarily saying that those players have to stay, but why they're important decisions. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And I want to talk about 5 standouts from the NFL Draft Combine, and I think the Chicago Bears should all take a look at. Yes, we got edges on the menu as well. I know people are going to ask that. We actually got 2 edges that stood out that the Chicago Bears should take a look at. And I guess we'll start off with that. Let's start off with Yeager Burton. We're going to start off with Malachi Lawrence, the edge out of UCF. This is a guy that had a great combine. He had an amazing combine. His athleticism stood out. The numbers that he put on for a pass rush player, it ranks among TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Montez Sweat. Like, Malachi Lawrence is a guy that stands out in basically every way that matters for an edge, especially under Dennis Allen's system. And this is a guy that, with the combine numbers showing, I would not be surprised if he's shooting up some mocks. And maybe he would have been available a little bit later, but Malachi Lawrence is an absolute freak. You cannot overlook what he's been able to do over his collegiate career. This guy is just somebody that is a physical specimen, 6'4", 250 pounds. This guy can outwardly play. You look at, he had 20 sacks over the 4 years of his college career, never cracked a double-digit sack year, but very consistent with putting pressure on quarterbacks. He had 3 forced fumbles over those 4 years as well, 4 passes deflected. This is a guy that I think if you add him with his strength and what he can bring to that defensive line for the Chicago Bears, that's a guy that can bring and alleviate some pressure on the opposite side of Montez Sweat. We know that Austin Booker doesn't necessarily have the traditional size that Dennis Allen does. Like, now, I don't think that's going to stop Dennis Allen from playing him in the rotation, but to have a guy the size of Malachi Lawrence there on that defensive line on the opposite side of Montez Sweat, that's huge there. This guy's probably going to be available on day 2, and because of that, I think he's definitely somebody that could be there for the Chicago Bears, and the Bears should definitely take a look at if they decide to go a different route with their first-round pick. But Malachi Lawrence is an absolute monster, an absolute beast, and I love what this guy, the potential that he brings to the field for the Chicago Bears. He's still going to have to develop him some, but like I said, there have been guys that have slipped there on day 2 before. Don't let the fact that he's not projected to be a first-round pick let you overlook the fact that this guy is a physical specimen. He is a monster, and he would be somebody that I think day 1 would help the Chicago Bears. He'd be kind of what they hoped Byard and Yingbo would be. That's my personal opinion. I think he'd be there and be an absolute monster there for him, and I think that's a great guy there for the Bears to look at. The next guy, Danny Dennis Sutton, the edge out of Penn State. Now, we know that the Bears need all the help they can get on the defensive line of the ball, right? You can't take that. But when you look at what this guy does as a rusher, he had one of the quickest 3-cone drills in the history of the draft combine, one of the top 3 finishes in 40-yard dash time, the broad jump, the vertical jump. This is a guy that some people are saying are going to be there on day 2. Now, I don't know if that's going to hold true after the draft combine, but if he's there as a day 2 pick, hey, listen, he is going to be good. 6'5", 265 pounds. He had 8.5 sacks each of his last 2 years at Penn State. Over the 4 years of him playing collegiate football, 23.5 sacks over that time. He also had 2 interceptions, 7 forced fumbles, 8 passes deflected. When you talk about somebody that has tremendous upside out the wazoo, that's a guy like Danny Dennis Sutton. This guy is an absolute beast, a monster of a prospect here for the Chicago Bears. And if he's there available on day 2 and is there when the Bears pick on day 2 at that, I'll say this. If he's there on day 2, if day 1 finishes and you go into day 2, I'm trying to trade up to make sure I can secure him in day 2 if he falls there. Because I tell you what, that's a guy that, man, you just cannot overlook the athletic ability that he has. And like we said, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is there. 23.5 sacks over 4 years in college football. There's just no doubt about it. If the Bears want to make a serious step forward as a contender, as we all expect them to want to do and we know that they need to do, you need to get that edge together. And Danny Dennis-Sutton is a guy that I think would be tremendous for the Chicago Bears. He stood out so well in this draft class, and I just think you can't overlook the potential that he has there. And if I know Ryan Poles, this is the type of guy that Ryan Poles would absolutely draft, because a guy that wasn't as necessarily as heralded as what you would expect and what you think, but especially per the production at a college like Penn State, this guy's a monster, man. And I would not be surprised at all if we look back on it, man. We look at this guy and we say, hey, yo, wait a second. Where did this guy get drafted at? Where was he available at? How did we get him? Because I'm telling you, this guy is going to be an absolute beast at the next level. Mark my words, y'all. I know I don't call him all the time, and I'm not saying that I'm ever going to say that I'm somebody that gets every single call right. Never that. No, nobody does in this game. But as a guy that can help a team and a guy at a position of need for the Chicago Bears, I just don't understand how the Bears would possibly pass up on a guy like this. He is that good. He is that good, and he is that ready for the Chicago Bears, I think, to come in here and to provide what you exactly need right now at that edge position. I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect. You still don't have to work with him as you are all these guys, but I do think he's a prospect that I look at and I say, as a day two, even if you want to go somewhere else with your day one pick, even if you want to go a different route, as a day two pick, there's almost no flaws to his game. There's almost no flaws to his game as a day two pick. The dude is damn near perfect at that and at a position of need at that. Yeah, bring that guy. I want that guy here in the Chicago Bears uniform. Next up, though, the center, Jaeger Burton out of Kentucky. Now, we know that we have 4 out of our 5 offensive line starting spots are locked in, right? You got Drew Dalman, no doubt. He's locked in. He's a starter. Darnell Wright, a starter. The way that Dan Rouchard talked about him, he may be Dan Rouchard's favorite player. Jonah Jackson, Joe Tooney, these guys are locked in. With Ozzie Trapillo's injury, we have another gap there. But the reason why I want to say draft Jaeger Burton here, and he's somebody that the Bears should absolutely look out and work out, is the fact of the matter is you're going to eventually need new guys for your veterans. And while Drew Dalman has signed a nice long contract here with the Chicago Bears, it's no problem having depth there. You want depth there. Now, we had relative health on the offensive line last year. Who's to say that we're going to be guaranteed that again? When you look at this guy, he was the first lineman at the combine to run a 40-yard dash in under 5 seconds. Not to say that all matters a lot for offensive linemen, but when you have a guy that can move that quickly at that position on the offensive line, it's something that can be said having the interior there as well, right? And so I think right now that's a guy that can help this team out as well. If you take him later on in the draft based off where he's going to be in the draft boards, if you take him later, I think you have a really nice prospect there that you can develop that's going to bring some upside for you and that can bring some depth there. And we know that you need depth in your trenches, right? You need depth in your trenches. Those are the guys that are crashing, colliding. You got 200, 300-pound guys there very consistently. So I like what he can have there in the future for the Chicago Bears and how he can be a depth piece almost immediately for this Bears team and provide that at a position where you're going to need some depth on that offensive line. Next up, the offensive tackle, Markel Bell out of Miami. I like this guy a lot, right? When you talk about somebody who can probably play left tackle right away, his combine speed, he ran a 5.36 40 when it came down to that. And, it's not as fast as like Burton's like we talked about, but 6'9", 346 pounds at a position of need at that. I tell you what, he just played in the national title game as well in January, and this is a guy that has the big game experience. He's had a great performance at the draft combine. I think when you're talking about drafting somebody who could potentially fill in for you as a starter, compete with Theo Benedict for that starting left tackle role, and then when Ozzie Trapillo is fully back healthy, you then have 2 big bodies there, and he can probably play swing tackle for you, can play on either side, and that's really what I want. If the Bears are going to go and draft a tackle in this draft, rather than go veteran to fill in 1 year for Ozzie Trapillo, I want somebody who can either play guard and tackle or somebody who can be swing tackle and can back up Darnell Wright and Ozzie Trapillo in the long run. If you get that guy in this draft, you've now shored that up. You have your tackle rotation locked in with young guys that as long as they stay, injury-free and relatively healthy, that can all fill in different roles and play different positions. We already know Ozzie Trapillo can flip sides, right? So all those type of things are there. I really like the prospect there. And Markel Bell is a guy that I really like and the potential of being in that tackle for the Chicago Bears. Next up, Surprisingly, not going to talk about a safety here because I talked about the safeties as a group, right? I talked about the safeties that stood out in the draft and safeties that I like because, we'll talk about it when we get into the pending free agents for the Bears. Safety is going to be a position of priority for the Bears, but wide receiver, right? And this isn't even if DJ Moore does leave. If he does, even put it in there even more. If we do trade DJ Moore because of position and help us get a veteran edge, so be it, right? But when you look at wide receivers, Bryce Lance, 6'3", 209-pound center out of North Dakota. He great player there. When you look at it, the last 2 years of his college career, where he only played 3 years, he only had one reception his freshman year, but the other 2 years, over 1,000 yards each. Last year, he averaged 21 yards per reception last year for 1,079 yards, 8 touchdowns. The season prior to that, he had 1,053 yards and 17 touchdowns, an average of 14 yards per reception. This is a guy that when you talk about potentially putting somebody in the slot and moving Rome Odunze and Luther Burden to your 1 and your 2, if you trade DJ Moore, I don't think you can go any wrong with this one. This guy, he's the younger brother of Trey Lance as well, so there you go. He ran a 4.3 40-yard dash as well. And when you look at the type of speed that you want there in that slot and how, you got to keep in mind, Ben Johnson, the slot receiver, is usually the receiver that sometimes gets the best stats. You talk about bringing that speed there and that position, man, I tell you what right now, Bryce Lance could be that guy for the Chicago Bears, again, at a position of need. And I do think that the Bears should definitely consider him, again, if they plan on moving DJ Moore to free up some space to go after a big-name edge, which I still have my doubts if they're going to do. But if they do, and I'll say this as well, depending on where he's going to be one of those guys that are going to be there in the later rounds, take him anyway. Even if you keep DJ Moore, Luther Burden, and Rome Odunze, if you were to draft Bryce Lance and have him there, which you then have him on his rookie scale deal for 4 years, depending on what happens the next few years where you have to make your decisions, Bryce Lance could be a guy that's ready there. You could bring him in your system. He fits that mold of what Ben Johnson likes as a slot receiver. I like the prospect of him being here a whole lot. So let me know what you guys think on those 5 standouts from the NFL Draft Combine. All these guys that the Bears could take a look at. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. With that said, I want to talk about next up. I want to talk about the Chicago Bears and the most important free agents that they have here. And by important, I just mean that what the decisions that's made on those guys mean for the team. Not necessarily saying that the player themselves is going to be a hugely important player for the Bears, but that decision is going to be important. And I think the first guy that you have to talk about that's kind of, that the Bears have to make a decision on is Jaquan Brisker. Depending on what happens with Jaquan Brisker, it changes what you need. And I talked about Jaquan Brisker potentially being a loser coming out of the draft combine because of all the safeties that are in this draft that can help the Chicago Bears. You look at the multiple concussions for Jaquan Brisker, despite playing all 17 games last year. We know the play style that he has. We know that he's a hard-hitting safety. We know that he can get over 100 tackles. We know all those things are there. But the questions that are in the future, even with him playing all 17 games, the decision that the Bears make on Jaquan Brisker is going to directly affect and impact what they have to prioritize in the draft. If you keep Jaquan, if you keep Kevin Byard, who I'll go ahead and throw it in, Kevin Byard's number 2 here, right? Your 2 starting safeties are number 1 and number 2 here. What if you keep Kevin Byard as well, which Ryan Poles has signaled that he wants to do? You still need to get his mate in the safety. You need to get his partner in there. And it needs to be somebody that can still bring a lot of the dynamic we saw with Kevin Byard and with Jaquan Brisker, the ability to play them guys inside, outside the box, blitz one of those guys, all those type of things, feed off each other. You're looking to replicate that with somebody that you don't have the same injury history with. So Jaquan Brisker, and that decision on him is probably the number 1 decision that's going to impact the Chicago Bears this offseason because he is a starter, and he is an impact starter when he's in the game as well. As far as Kevin Byard, it just comes down to the veteranship of Kevin Byard, right? And if you were to let both those guys go, you got to draft 2 safeties, or you got to at least get another veteran. But I think for what Kevin Byard's probably going to get in free agency, he's going to stay here. Ryan Poles, like I said, have already signaled the hand. But Jaquan Brisker, number 1, Kevin Byard, number 2, and our safety and the impact that has on what we do in the draft with our safety position is huge, and it's going to reverberate through the rest of the roster. Defensive backs are so important in Dennis Allen's system that I think you have to prioritize those guys as number 1, number 2 importance, because if you make a decision where you don't keep one or both of those guys, then just for Dennis Allen to scheme the way that he wants to scheme, you have to bring in guys that can make impacts right away. And so I think that's an important part as well. Number 3 is Nahshon Wright. And the reason why I say this on Nahshon Wright is that if the Bears were to bring back Nahshon Wright at the price that he can probably get out in free agency, that all but signals you're not going after a big-time defensive end. Like if you give Nahshon Wright $15 to $17 million, you're not going after the Trey Hendricksons. You're not going after the Max Crosbys. You're not going after those guys. And it almost guarantees that you're looking to fill the hole at the edge in the draft if that's what happens. That's why I have him as high on the level of importance here. Listen, Nahshon Wright had his issues in coverage. I talked about them when people like Darius, shout out to my brother Darius, was so enamored by the takeaways that he was getting. I said, hold on, let's pump our brakes here. Look at what he's doing in coverage. And that's a thing that I do think is going to keep him from being here on top of the money long-term with the Chicago Bears, as well as having a guy like Zay Frazier, who we know Dennis Allen is super high on, that can come in here. Terrell Smith's coming back from injury, those type of things. I think the writing's on the wall for that. But if the Bears did decide, because of what Nahshon Wright did last year, to bring him back, it all but signals we're not going after a big-time edge. And like I said, I'm not even saying that necessarily has to be what the Bears do. I know more casual fans, they want to hear the names, those type of things. But at the same time, you have to do what you feel is going to put your team in the best place overall, both now and in the future. And so Nahshon Wright, just with the money that it's rumored that he can get out in the free agent market, I just don't expect him to come back for the Bears. But if they were to bring him back, it'd be a huge decision that reverberates and affects our ability to go after a big-time edge and the flexibility that we have there. Next up, DeMarco Jackson. And I think that this is a big-time decision for the Bears because Tremaine Edmonds isn't going to be here. They've given him permission to seek a trade. If he doesn't find a trade, then they're going to cut him. And so DeMarco Jackson, if you decide to bring him back, you're bringing in a guy that, at least when he was on the football field last year, played pretty damn well for you, right? And so we already let Jack Sanborn depart in free agency. And we're probably already going to have to draft a linebacker at some point in this draft, right? But when you look at DeMarco Jackson, the understanding that he has of Dennis Allen's defense, and while TJ Edwards is going to miss some time at the beginning of the season with injuries, and Edmonds may be gone via trade, DeMarco Jackson may be the one sign of continuity that we have in that linebacking core going into next year. Noah Sewell may not be healthy to start off next year if he's even still on the roster himself. So because of that, I think DeMarco Jackson's a huge, important free agent decision here for the Chicago Bears. And if the Bears do decide to not bring him back, it means that we could very well have all new faces in the linebacking core next year. And depending on how you view that, that may be a good thing, that may be a bad thing, it may be something that causes a little bit of concern, but it would point to that if that's what ends up happening for the Chicago Bears. Next up, the last one that I have here is Braxton Jones. And the reason why I say this is Braxton is that, if the Bears do decide to go over familiarity so they don't have to draft a left tackle or they don't have to sign another veteran, it's going to get expensive, right? I don't see Braxton Jones taking a 1 or even 2-year deal. He's probably going to at least want 3 years in regards to that. Now, bringing him back, bringing Braxton Jones back to a locker room that kind of, I think Dan Rouchar has already been candid on his feelings on the left tackle spot, and that includes Braxton Jones. If he thought Braxton Jones was a guy that you can bet on, he would have mentioned his name and not talked about a nameless, faceless left tackle that's going to be starting there next year. So I think the Braxton Jones decision is he's going to find himself on the open market. Now, I will say this, though, that if he does not find the deal that he wants in the open market, the Bears could very well bring him back, bring somebody that's familiar with the system. Isn't great, right? But isn't as terrible as some people make him out to be either when it comes to Braxton Jones. I think at that point you're betting on Theo Benedict to be a consistent starter for you, which may or may not be the right thing to do. But Braxton Jones, if he does not find the deal that he wants, he could end up back in the Chicago Bears uniform, and I think that would have a direct impact on the draft as well. So those are the guys that I think, again, the decisions that are made on them are going to have a really big impact on what the Bears do in other places, and that's why I talked about it. Last thing to get in before we get out of here is that there are some trade rumors in regards to Gervon Dexter that popped up during the draft combine, and Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune came out and said this. They're not taking trade calls on him. They're not making calls on him. I'm reporting nothing has happened on that. They've got 2 defensive tackles under contract. They're not looking to move one. So if you take Brad Biggs, not to say that Brad Biggs always is right on everything, but Brad Biggs is actually coming out directly and saying the Chicago Bears are not looking, basically saying they're not taking calls, they are not looking to move Gervon Dexter. And this was something that, I think Bobby and C-Dub talked about on their episode over the weekend, and it makes some sense. Like, I get it that Bears fans have been spoiled by players like Tommy Harris. Gervon Dexter's production at the defensive tackle is great. I mean, it's not great. It's solid, right? But the thing that you have to ask there, and this was the thing that when the rumor popped up, is you have to ask how much his limitations are holding you back. And his limitations in the run game, how much is that holding you back? Now, if the Bears improve their linebacker spot, maybe they feel comfortable about it. If they improve the defensive tackle next to him, maybe they feel better about that, right? All these things can factor into how they may still feel comfortable keeping Gervon Dexter long-term here, considering he's on the 4th year of his rookie scale deal. And if the Bears feel that way, then so be it, right? Like Gervon Dexter, here's what I'll say. moving off of Gervon Dexter, unless you get a clear upgrade, you're probably going to get a player that net impact is about the same. That's generally about where you're going to fill that. Now, I think that you can be better at trying to get somebody in that can fill the gap there. Is that Shamar Turner? Is it somebody that you're going to draft? That's your question. There's overall improving your linebacker and your edges. Is that where it comes down from? But Dex, I think the Bears are going to want to take this next year with Dex and really decide, all right, then what are we going to do with them long term? And this last year may determine where Dex ends up falling on long term. But according to Brad Biggs, Gervon Dexter isn't going anywhere. And I don't necessarily think that that's the wrong decision either. I'll say that. I don't think it's the wrong decision. We just got to see what's going to come out of it. But that's it. That's the blueprint for the Chicago Bears this year. I want to hear from you guys. Which draft combine stood out to you that you would draft? Who do you think the most important free agent is for the Chicago Bears? And would you extend Gervon Dexter right now or wait to the end of next season as well? Let me know what you guys think on that one. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell if you never want to miss an episode. You can follow us at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.